I just need to add something. You know how Wasian just said like Digital makes like the server better? I'm pretty sure you get worse if you watch Milk stream because he always does like.
Wait, what?
Like the thing is, he always like he'll like one trick Kaisa to like rank 1, and then you look at his stream, it's like, all right, all I gotta do is I gotta build Shojin JG, and then I'm gonna win the game. And then you do it in your own game, you just go 8.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Don't Talk If You Don't Know, the unofficial official podcast dedicated to all things high-level teamfight tactics in North America, as we take on the Runeterra Reforged Wrapped episode today on November 16th, 2023. My name is Frodan. I'm your host as usual. Joined with me is a new face to the show that people are not familiar with. It's Casanova, who's filling in for Bryce. Bryce, unfortunately, could not make it tonight because he was on a date with his wife, and he said that he could make it to the show, but he accidentally double booked. So we wish Bryce a happy night off because, as you know, Bryce had twins with his family, so he went from 1 to 3 kids. They don't get many nights off, and so if he is able to get a night away from the fam, they gotta take it. So understandable. And on that note, we're more than happy to welcome Casanova, who you may have seen cast a lot of the North American circuits, but also came to the World Championship alongside myself in Spain. So, Cass, welcome to the show.
No, thank you so much. I'm excited to be on a show that's a little bit less, like, I don't know, buttoned down all the time. Get to just hang out and talk about TFT and have some fun. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
that's right. You're usually official casters, so you're usually all proper and professional, but this show is anything but, as you probably have
Unleashed.
Learned over the past years or two.
I've watched it plenty, yeah.
We want to welcome back to the show Wasianiverson, who previously we also had him on a Wrapped episode, but that's because he made it to back-to-back World Championship and made deep runs 2 seasons in a row. Wasian, welcome back. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. I'm very excited to be back, but I do feel like I need to go on like a preview episode one day so I can do a fantasy draft.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. It just seems fun. I feel like I could win.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm excited to see what you got in the upcoming fantasy. We'll recap a little bit of fantasy for the season, and I'm so sad. I'll tell you guys more about it in a bit, but I'm so sad Bryce is not here because recapping fantasy is one of my favorite activities, especially after set 9. More on that later. Let's all go ahead and also welcome in our second special guest. It's Torontotokyo. Now the thing is, it's not the Torontotokyo you might think and hear of if it's their first time. It's like, oh, the Dota player who was at the International? Is he also a TFT player? It's a different Torontotokyo. He goes by Lebo Chang is in real life. You might have actually seen him as a pro gamer in StarCraft previously. So Toronto, welcome to the show. Why don't you introduce yourself again for anybody who may not actually have seen you before?
Yeah, I'm a TFT player now. I used to be a StarCraft 2 player about 10 years ago. I was on Team EG at the time, and now I just play TFT for fun and also competitively. And thank you, Frodan, for having me on.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact that might blow your guys' mind. When Toronto was a teenager and he was competing in StarCraft, I actually casted him as a StarCraft because I was also a StarCraft caster about 11 years ago. So our worlds actually have collided at one point where I was actually casting, but I didn't realize this until I saw your fact sheet for regionals when you said you were a former StarCraft pro. I was like, your name sounds so familiar. I went back and looked, and I didn't realize that I actually, if you go back, there's probably somewhere on the internet, YouTube VODs, of Frodan and Greetorp casting StarCraft 2, and it's probably a Toronto game when he was just like a young teenager. Did you know that, and did you keep it, or was that news to you as well?
Yeah, that's news to me, but I feel like I know you so well. You probably don't know me so well, but I grew up watching like the old NASL StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
I was like, I used to watch that every single day, so it's just like, I feel like I've seen you around for more than a decade now, I guess.
It's so funny too because Toronto took like a long break, I guess, from like the public limelight and taking pictures. So we only have pictures of when he was a teenager as a pro gamer. So any photos that we've used for like the social media announcements and stuff is just because he's kind of like off the grid now, so to speak. But we're more than happy to welcome you back into the TFT. So let's go ahead and just catch up about life. So let's talk about like what's been going on. What Cass, you were in Spain, you were casting the World Championship. That was your first time you casted Worlds on that kind of stage. What was it like for you?
Yeah, so for TFT, I've been like wanting to get to Worlds for forever, right? I started casting TFT in set 1, right? Like I was doing Fight Night with Crowan forever. And then eventually kind of took a break, did Legends of Runeterra, did Worlds for that, came back, and getting a chance to go to Spain and work with all of you is kind of like a big dream. Like I've been in esports for so long. I was a pro player, then a caster. Like going to Spain, working in that big movie studio, right? It's just it's an incredible experience, and like adventures with Bebe I will always remember. And now it's it's a Vegas waiting room to see what happens next, right?
Yeah, do you have any funny Bebe stories? Just tell us one. I have many Bebe stories, but just tell me one funny or like interesting moment that you had with him or with Mortdog, because I think that maybe that was the first time you met Mortdog as well.
Yeah, the immediate one that comes to mind with Bebe is so the day after the show, me, Bebe, and Pie Hat were there for one additional day. And so Bebe wanted to like show us around Alicante, right? And so he's taking us to a castle, and we end up like going up this route, and there's a sign that says, Castillo this way, right? So it's like, okay, that's where we should go. But Bebe's like, no, we're gonna take this path and follow these people. They must know. And so we go the other path. It doesn't go all the way up to the castle. We walk like up this steep ass hill for a while. Pie Hat's dying. Anyways, it doesn't get to the top of castle. We come back down. Later, we're getting dinner, and Counterfeit tells me that Bebe did the same thing to Panda the previous year, and they had tried to like scale the mountainside to make it to the castle.
Wait, so he actually did this with me too. He did this in 3 separate incidents.
Yeah, I guess so.
Wait, what? He just does it. Okay, you know what the hilarious thing is of this story? There's an elevator you can take to the top. You don't even have to actually climb the stairs manually to the top of the castle. So you're telling me that Bebe manually tried to just climb 3 times in a row by foot to the top of the castle instead of actually going to the castle. He's never been to the castle. He's only been outside of it.
Yep. I don't think he's ever made it. And yeah, he told us there's a lift, and we were trying to find our way to it.
Okay.
But ended up like, I don't know, man. It was absolutely insane, but it was still like a fun experience, right? We got to explore the city and everything, but that's my crazy Bebe story. There are plenty, but of course for time,
I love that. I love that. Wage, we talked a little bit about in the pre-show, but now we're actually during the show. You actually struggle with Worlds and like your school schedule, right? You had midterms going on, and everything turned out okay with that?
Yeah, everything turned out okay. Actually, my biggest fear is that like one day, like one of these big tournaments is going to be like on the same day as a test, and it's like really hard to get these test moves. And like since I've been competing, it's never happened before, but I know it's going to happen someday, and I have no idea what I'm going to do.
Didn't you? Okay, so was it with you that Bryce was like, I will write a letter to your professor to like help you move that? He did it with DQA, by the way, for the World Championship, and it worked. Did you actually end up taking that offer at all, or did you not do that?
I didn't take him up on it, but I might have to someday. Like,
okay.
The thing is, it's really hard for them to move it because there's like obviously like security concerns and stuff. Like if you write the exam first, like,
right. You can leak it to
that you're like
else.
telling other people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So. Okay. Got it. Well, I'm glad everything worked out. Hopefully you got good enough grades. It all worked out, especially because TFT is fun, but education, especially if you are working in a field related to your major, is really important. So that's a little bit about us in terms of like what I've been catching up to. I was at the World Championship, but ever since then I've been jamming a lot of Set 10 PBE, which we're going to talk about right now just a little bit. We're not going to go too much in depth into Set 10 in general, but kind of want to get people's first impressions as we're transitioning, because it launches next week, November 21st, alongside, by the way, mobile, which is getting that ability for people to log in through PB and on tablet support as time goes on. So really exciting stuff. So first reactions to Set 10. Let's start off with Toronto.
I think it's going to be a better set than Set 9. I feel like people always say this, but the problem with Set 9 was that you just had to play a bunch of Portable Forge and kind of the same augments. So the thing I'm looking forward to the most is just being able to play like a wide breadth of augments again without feeling like I'm getting handicapped by playing Porto, because that's kind of what it was for all of Set 9. So just that part of the game is going to be a lot funner just to start. And that opens up more things, because a lot of Portable Forge and like Earth on 2-1 was like, you get this augment and you're forced into this line, right? Where I feel like now we're back, we're kind of playing TFT again. So that's my thoughts on it. So
Okay. And so just for my own familiarity with it, when did you start competing in TFT? Actually, when did you start playing TFT? And when did you start taking it seriously? Because you're kind of a mystery box in terms of when you actually started. We're not entirely sure.
Oh yeah, so I started playing TFT in set 1, but it's always been, here and there, more casually, I guess. It's kind of hard to say when I really took it seriously. I guess I really took it seriously in set 9, but I've always been like trying to climb and play since maybe like set 6, set 7.
Okay, got it. Wasian, what is your impression of set 10? How much have you been able to play it so far? You like it?
Yeah, I played like a decent amount of set 10. Out of like all the sets that I've like played and competed, it seems like by far like the most flexible set of all time. Like it feels like verticals are like not very important and you just want to play like a bunch of like good units. I think like that might be like, I'm almost like a bit concerned about that because I feel like it's very different than like what I'm used to. So I'm wondering like how that's going to affect me. But I also feel like in terms of like replayability and like fun, it's like a very good thing. So I am very excited.
Okay. So that's right. You didn't play Chosen in Fates in set 4. Because you started in set 6, set 7?
Yeah, maybe I played like 10 or 20 games of it, but like, yeah, I didn't like actually play it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think that's going to be a new fascinating thing because there's like this new wave of players who haven't really experienced that because they started a lot later. I'm sure you'll get up to speed, man. You're in elite. You know how to get good. I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out. I'm really excited for that. Cass, your first impressions of set 10?
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is it feels a lot more like a modular TFT, right? Like you find your little different smaller synergies and put them together to just make really unique and creative boards. And I think that I really like just how flexible it plays right now. I think I'm somebody who historically in TFT, I liked playing with a lot of direction, but recently I've started to have a lot more fun with flex play. And that's why I really hated a lot of like 9.5 because it didn't feel so flexible. It was like what I used to like as a TFT player, but not what I've been more recently enjoying. And I think set 10 kind of is scratching that itch like immediately of being this like really flexible set. And I think that because of that, it should be really good. I think they fixed Chosen. I didn't really like Chosen in set 4 personally. I wasn't a big fan of it. But I think that the fact that you can still see the headliners, like every 4 rolls is pretty nice. But on top of it, I've actually found that since I'm just a lot better at TFT than I was in set 4, just kind of selling out of headliners and just creating new boards like every couple stages, you just completely like sell almost everything, make a new board, has been a lot of fun. So
why didn't you like set 4? Just out of curiosity. It's one of the most popular sets alongside the base set 1 and set 6 when they introduced augments.
I genuinely think it was like a skill diff. I think I was just like not very good, and because Chosens were difficult for my playstyle of like trying to find direction or play like a very specific comp, and then like if I can't find the Chosen for it, like I'm actually just boned and it sucks. I think like I struggled a lot in that set, and because I was at that time not even casting TFT, I wasn't really even playing very much TFT at all. The fact that I was playing so little games, I think just made me dislike it.
Got it. Okay, well, no one asked me, but this is my show, so I'm going to ask myself. Roden, what do you think about set 10? I just want to say one thing. We made it. We did it. We made it across the desert. 40 years in the wastelands, and now we're in the land of milk and honey. Set 10 is the promised land. Oh my god. I forgot what it was like to play real TFT. More talks in chat, so just go ahead and just relax for a bit here. I forgot what it was like to taste what good, delicious TFT feels like. I forgot what it meant to make meaningful, fluid decisions that actually had consequences for not understanding what I'm actually doing. Instead of just stacking higher or just like doing the same type thing and just like, well, it's not Shojin, it's actually blue buff. Oh, it's actually Nashor's Tooth and this. I mean, that kind of optimization is like all fine and good in its own right, but that's not what I'm here to do TFT. That I did that in Hearthstone. I did that with a lot of card games where it's like maybe this one card out of 30 or one card out of your lineup of 90 cards is like the difference, right? That's what the granularity was of optimization for TFT for so long. And I kind of want to just recapture the magic of what made this game truly special, because TFT is. And set 10 is that. Now that's a question of balance and whether or not we can make the mechanics work. A lot of headliner plus portals are still around and all these kind of different things with bonuses. Maybe the balance is still not going to be there. But I just want to say, this has been the best that TFT has felt in years. And I am so excited to play 10. And more importantly, I'm excited to see where the competitive scene takes off. So Welcome back, Teamfight Tactics. And on that note, I also want to say, you guys may have seen it, I did a little flub with my production, is that not only is TFT back, TFT is on the map. There's a cool thing that's coming up for people who are a big fan of League of Legends esports. The World Championship is extremely hyped. Faker is destroying the Golden Golden Road, and taking out each LPL team one by one. It's going to be really exciting between T1 and Weibo Gaming. But also premiering at the World Championship Finals is a TFT music video. Did you guys see this announcement? It's actually really sick. It's got DJ Sona and Yasuo and everything like that. Wait, did you get a chance to see this announcement at all?
No, I actually didn't see this yet.
Okay, it's really sick. So if you're a fan of League, 'cause I know you are because you used to play League a lot, even before TFT, it's going to be really hype. Make sure you check that out. I know we're not normally a League of Legends podcast, and if we were, we'd probably be a lot less happy, maybe not even playing the game. But now we're here, we're doing TFT, and now we're going to be premiering on the world stage. It's going to be really sick. Just goes to show you how far TFT has come along. Okay, but as much as we want to talk about set 10 and all the good stuff, we're here to also recap set 9. This is mainly a reflective episode. If it's your first time reading it, we're going to be, or being here for this type of episode, we're going to talk about worlds in just a moment here, and then we're going to talk about a different type of rankings. Before, when we do power rankings, it's about previewing what's to come and set expectations, right? How good is Wasianiverson's form? Is Torontotokyo actually not just a beast in scrims? Is he going to do well in tournaments, and talk about that? This is like a definitive episode that we wrap up and talk about everyone's set holistically and talk about like the broader storylines of players. And this is, I mean, Bryce is actually really sad because this is his favorite episode of the set every single time. But it's an opportunity for us to be reflective, because I think it's important to keep in mind what happens in TFT, because so much goes on. The off season is like a couple weeks at most, and we want to really make sure that we're able to also appreciate people's performances. And speaking of performances, let's start off with the World Championship and the fact that this title guy is an absolute animal. I actually asked Natures to run the stats on Title, and Title over the course of 3 championships has averaged a 3.76 with a first place rate of 27% and top 4 rate of 65%. That's 3 champs in a row that he's been doing that, where he got second in one and first in another. I want to ask the players who went up against him. So I'll start off with Toronto. What was it like going up against Title? What was it like playing the World Championship for you?
I mean, I think Title is really strong. I don't really know if there's too much to say. He was really strong in scrims. He was obviously really strong in the tournament, so really strong player. For how it was to play the tournament, I would say that for me personally, I feel like I rank the TFT players in like 2 kind of categories, because I don't really see anyone that's just like far and away better than anybody else in the field. Like personally, I had Wasianiverson as my favorite to win the tournament. But the thing is, like, once you get to this higher echelon, like the top 10, top 15 players, everybody's just really solid. And that's just how I would describe it, where nobody's making really obvious bad blunders. And then I feel like anybody in that top 10, I wouldn't be surprised if they won the tournament, just if they had a good day. So, yeah, I don't know. It was really fun to play the tournament. It was a great honor. And I hope I can make it again.
Okay. Wasian, you came in with like a lot of expectations and hope, right? Like in the sense that this is your second championship in a row that you made, and it's kind of like your second full set. So if anything, you're just kind of having an additional breakout performance following up your rookie season. Did that weigh on you? I think a lot of people were saying like, Wasian's going to be in there, he's going to win for NA, etc. Did that mess with your head at all?
I did see those kinds of comments, but I actually felt way less pressure than like the first time I was at Worlds. I think it's like partly the experience, but also like partly it was because like the first time I went to Worlds, I felt like, oh, like this might be like my only shot at Worlds, like I'll never go again. But like even at, like this time at Worlds, like I kind of realized even if things don't go my way, like I feel like I'll have lots of other chances to like play in like these like high stakes tournaments, and like someday I'll probably like have a chance to make it back to Worlds. So I mean, I guess just in that sense, like I just didn't feel like nearly as much pressure, and I think that's also like something that really contributed to like my success, because I'm sure that there's like lots of players, it's like their first time at Worlds and they were like super nervous, but yeah, I actually didn't feel that like as much this time, which was very good.
Wasian, can you tell us a bit about that like final lobby and Title being on the tear of like win-win? He's on the final game on game 4. Like, did you feel any different on that game of what you wanted to do in game plan? Because it felt like, you know, Title was playing like everyone was against him with the way that he, you know, sacked the first couple rounds. He was trying to hold on to those tomes, try and play something uncontested, and went out from there. But on your end of it, where you're trying to stop this guy potentially from going first again, like, how was that situation going for you?
Yeah, so for me, like, going into that game, like, my number one concern was just trying to get like a top 3 finish in that game, because I needed a top 3 finish to get into like check, which is like a huge deal. Like fourth versus like eighth is like almost no difference, but like fourth between fourth versus third is like a huge difference, because then it just means like I can win the tournament like on the next game if Title doesn't win. Like, I was not that concerned with like kind of like griefing him almost, but I feel like he played that game like really excellently, and that he like gave people almost like zero chance to grief him. Like, he just like lost streaked and then like 3-5'd it and like hit his whole board in like one turn. It's like when he already has like all of his upgrades, like there's not even anything to grief. Like, he's just pushing levels at that point. So yeah, and I mean, I think like you have to consider like there's still like a lot of money on the line. Like, even if he wins the tournament, like you still want to play for your like max placements and like stuff. So yeah, I feel like it's a lot like more complicated than just like, oh, like grief Title because he can win.
Yeah, of course.
Do you think so people say that it's not Japan, it's Title, right? Like, Title is the strong player, and it's, and as much as people like to tie into regionality of things, like Title is the only threat from Japan. Do you feel like that's actually true? I mean, you scrimmed against Kaz, and you've played 2 worlds against Japanese players. Do you think Japan is a strong region? And if so, you know, I just want to hear your like commentary about like that, because I think a lot of people are saying like it's just Title. You agree with that?
I mean, I don't think that Japan is like a super weak region, but I do think like Title is like noticeably like a notch above like the rest of like the Japanese players.
Okay. And I think that's fair. I mean, right now, I think the data suggests that Japan has been able to get players into the final lobby, but, you know, not to put too much, not to flame LATAM, but LATAM actually has this experience a lot where they get to the final lobby and then they kind of like either get blasted, or it's just like, you know, it just feels like they've had like 1 or 2 runs where they got close, but that was the only player that got outmatched. Because I think, going back to what Toronto was saying, you look at 2nd to 7th and they're separated just by a few points, and it really could have just been like, if we got a couple other games, maybe things reverse. And you saw how close some of those games were, where maybe like one fight is like 3 placement swings, right? So it goes from, maybe Volta goes from 7th to 3rd, and Wasian can go like 3rd to 6th. And so I personally believe that Title is that good, and Japan is underrated, but I've yet to see a little bit more from JP if they actually are like the strongest region in the world. I think Title is just phenomenal. Tron, I want to ask about EMEA. You know, we were a little trash. There's some trash talking. Actually, I got flamed on the main broadcast because I was trash talking EMEA on Twitter a little bit for fun. And then they've got 2 people in the final lobby. What was your read on EU? A lot of people love to make fun of this region because they haven't made Worlds finals lobby in like 3 sets, and now all of a sudden they're getting more people into that top 8. What was your vibe on that?
Actually, I mean, I don't really have any bad blood against EU, because I feel like in this esport we don't really play against EU a lot. So I think EU is actually really solid. The players that they sent to this Worlds were really solid. I don't really know if there's much more to say about that, but when I played in scrims and in Worlds, like, I didn't see them making any obvious mistakes. I just felt like they were all, like, especially Wet Jungler, I thought he was playing really well. It was really good.
Yeah.
Wasian, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think EU is like I think they have like a lot of strong players, but I actually think that they don't have any like 1 or like 2 players that I feel like stand out like super hard to me. And I feel like let's say there was some like merged server of like EU and NA, like I feel like NA would just be like an NA player would like always be like rank 1 in my opinion.
Ah, interesting.
That's what we love to hear. Yeah.
So you're saying there's no like elite of like Japan has Title, right? Almost like if they need one player to win against an alien race, right, in a game of TFT, there's like NA could choose a few players, China could choose a few players, Japan could stand Title, and you're saying EU doesn't have that player. Is that right?
Yeah, that's like kind of how it feels to me. Like, maybe I could be wrong, but that was kind of my impression just from like scrims, and like, I mean, I watch EU tournaments and stuff as well just to study.
Okay.
Yeah, Wasian saying if the alien race comes, EU is screwed. They're doomed.
Yeah.
They're not gonna live. A lot of the other regions, they're fine. They're gonna live. EU not gonna make it.
I mean, it kind of depends. I think part of it is also visibility for the rest of the world. I think unless you watch EU, there's a couple of players that did stand out this season. I think Sasa did really well in particular. He won 2 tournaments. He did the same thing at what Setsuko and Kurum did, which is like win 2 tournaments out of like the 3-4 tournament season, which is like really, really impressive. So there are a couple of players that stand out. And of course, people like really like to talk about Double 61, but I think people kind of have forgotten a little bit of that. We'll see. Either way, it's funny because I got flamed by EU, but I'm like one of the only NA casters that's willing to give them credit at all. So like I don't understand. They shoot the messenger, man. They just shoot the messenger.
Yeah, it's funny because like I'll give them credit on broadcast while flaming in the production room like pretty consistently, but I just didn't take it to Twitter, so they left me alone. I think that's the big difference.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about CN, by the way.
CN, yeah.
Very quickly. CN had 3 players in, but more specifically, the story of the tournament was their mobile players. Could you tell the difference at all, Wasian, going up against mobile players CN, where they're just as strong as the PC players? Because that was a big storyline because China didn't even believe in them. They were like, man, we sent mobile players. We're going dead last. Like, we're not winning this Worlds. We suck. And then the mobile players impressed the Chinese players.
No, like I genuinely thought even like in scrims and like in the tournament, like even before the tournament happened, like I genuinely thought that they were actually like quite strong players. The one thing is like sometimes they would make some like really, really like strange decisions, but like maybe it's like one guy or something. But yeah, I mean I think like as a whole they were actually like very strong and like actually like Worlds level players.
Okay, so if NA decided to host like some seeds in NA was determined by mobile, you wouldn't be opposed to that?
Oh, I mean, I would be very opposed to that just because, like, the thing is, those guys who qualified, like, they've probably been, like, grinding mobile, like, super hard for, like a very, very long time. And also, the thing is, the mobile game is actually, like, a bit different. But the thing is, for, like, in NA TFT, there's no reason that, like, mobile players couldn't just compete against, like, PC players because the game's the exact same.
Okay. Toronto, I pulled up the scores. You were 10th. You were really close. What happened day 2? Day 1, momentum was all on your side, man. It looked like things were great. I thought we were going to get 2 people in, and then it started off rocky. You finished stronger, but it felt like that first half of the day was not going your way. And what was happening on your end?
I think I punted. My placements really came down to one game I threw, which was the Demacia game. But, I mean, I don't think it was like a nerves thing. It was kind of I had a really faulty heuristic going into that game where I thought that if I'm on level 7 and I have a 2-star carry with Demacia Crest and Jarvan 1 as a run line with items on him, that I can go 8. That's what I thought, and I think that was a bad thing to think as a player. Like, you should never have any hard rules like that. I think I just didn't kind of understand that I needed to roll more in that specific spot. I was really unfamiliar with Nyla carry as a Demacia Crest holder because that never came up in practice for me, where I just hit Nyla in like one roll and then I have to play Nyla carry. So it was just a really unfamiliar spot in that particular game, which that should have been a 2nd, and it ended up being a 7th. And the other games, I think I actually low rolled like 3 or 4 games in a row, but it would have all been fine if I had just closed out the Demacia game that I was supposed to close out, because I was in a really good spot that game. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really think it was like bad luck or anything overall. I think I just didn't play well enough. So there's not much to say.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are gonna like look at like the 8-8 and like games like 3 and 4 of the day. But like we watched those games back, and one of them was actually like so sad. It was it was a silver start, which is already like kind of bad. And then he got like no good options, so he was forced to like take branching out. Then he got like challenger, and it's like challenger is fine, but like he had like no opener for it. So it's like, oh, like open until 3-5. Roll 40 gold, 0 Kaisa, 0 Fiora. It's like, yeah, you're just like 8th.
Yeah.
Like, it was actually so sad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's one, very tragic to hear. 2, it's actually cool that you VOD reviewed the games after you were literally from the tournament. Was this to help Wasian, or is that just for your own improvement, Toronto?
Oh, that was the help Wasian. I thought like there were some interesting spots in that. The other one was when I took a tome, and then I basically didn't get any trait that was on my board. It was like Bruiser and Slayer, and I had no Bruisers and 0 Slayers.
Okay.
Right, so I was thought like maybe Wasian can learn something from this spot, and then like we kind of figured out that it's basically the item components that you have, like what you should commit to. But yeah, I do want to add a thing about China. I actually still think, going back to the previous point, I actually still think that China as a whole is the strongest region. I think that for a various amount of reasons, even aside from what happened at Worlds, but I just feel like on the average, their player base just seems to have a better, more efficient read of the meta than almost any other region that I watch. And I thought the mobile players were still all really solid, and they do make mistakes like every other player, but I still think that China is number one, and I still think that NA is number two. So
okay, I mean, we're a very biased podcast, so it's hard to argue against that. I guess the only thing I want to know is about SEA. I think, and I don't want this to sound like, you know, it's like super flame, but like SEA really did not do well this tournament, and they were kind of hyped up as like a big region that was like, you know, that they got their second chance at Worlds. Last Worlds they actually came really close and won in the final lobby to potentially steal it from replay, and now like they like bombed this tournament. Was that a meta read thing, Wasian, or was there anything else that you noticed?
I mean, I think like I think SEA might have been like a slightly weaker region, but I actually do think Piva, like one of the players at Worlds, I actually think he's like an extremely strong player. He plays on like NA a lot, and like he's really good on the NA ladder, and also he was like doing really well in scrims and like had like really impressive like stats and performance in like SEA tournaments. So I actually expected him to do really well, and he didn't end up doing so well. And like I'm not really sure what the cause of that is. Like I haven't watched like every player's games, but yeah, I mean I do think SEA has some like pretty strong players, but yeah, definitely like a bit of a disappointing Worlds for them.
He was rank 1 global. We hyped him up a lot, and like we had high expectations for Piva. So it was strange to see him not perform. I also was curious about this. I have not yet like reviewed those games to see if there are any issues. I mean, Toronto, did you see anything like in the games you were in from the SEA players that could lead to anything? Do you see anything in scrims that could explain it, or do you think, I don't know, just variance?
Yeah, it's probably just variance, but I don't know. I mean, I also the thing I also took away from that is like when I say I didn't make top 8, I think if I was a better player, I would have made top 8. And after playing like a lot of tournaments recently, I feel like there's actually less variance than people think there is. Like, I don't know. It's like a really complicated topic. I think there's a lot of variance, and at the same time, like I think the best players on average, like if you were to take like the top 15 players, I feel like top 10 like did place in the top 15. So I guess it's like I didn't really think people was like a crush or anything. Like I said, he's a solid player, like Wasianiverson was saying. But if he didn't make top 15, I don't think it would be a huge surprise or anything like that.
I think most players have kind of established that like making top cut half is actually like mostly, if not all, skill, and then like winning is like where the variance is like where it kicks in. Like getting first place, like you can't ever like really do that, but making final lobby, like that's something especially if you're surviving top half cutoff, like that's a lot of like agency and skill. Would you agree with that, Wasian?
Like yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I mean it's also kind of bad for me because I'm a player who either wins the tournament or like
that's actually true. Well, interestingly enough, some of the stats actually say slightly differently, but we can talk about that in a second. The last I want to point out is I know we're giving SEA some grief, but man, it could be worse. It could be Korea. Korea did terribly this tournament to the point where it was actually like shocking, because I think we expected Bobe to do better, but they also like some of the players that were in the tournament just looked completely lost and outmatched. I'm actually kind of blown away about like how bad Korea is. And Bebe tried to explain to me, saying that like the way the tournament system is structured and incentivized actually actively turns away top players from taking the game very seriously. They just don't have people that consistently able to elevate their gameplay at a world's level. And it's just like kind of a for-fun region, which is a kind of a shame, because I think Korea is just, you know, obviously like really great at almost every game they compete in. And the fact that they're like this bad, they were the worst performing region by far at Worlds. It's very, very shocking. They didn't have a single player make the top half. We'll see though. I would love to eat my words, because you don't have to look very far to see Korea do well in other games. Okay, best moment of the tournament to wrap up Worlds discussion here. Let's start off with Toronto. What was the best moment for you?
Oh man, it's kind of hard to say. I feel like just the entire experience, I really think it's an honor to play at Worlds. I think that's kind of every TFT player's dream. Like, I mean, I'm kind of bummed out that I didn't make it to the final lobby, but really the entire experience was so fun. And I think like in the last 2 games, I kind of just thought like, you know, as Wasian said, you might make it to Worlds again, you might not, but it's kind of like one of those things when you're in the moment, you actually have to appreciate the fact that not many people get the opportunity to be here to represent kind of like your region and playing. And just that alone, I feel like you should really enjoy it because you might never do it again in your lifetime. So it's just like, I don't know. I really enjoyed playing the Worlds just as a whole.
Oh, so respectful. And it's also like a mark of a seasoned competitor. So it's great to hear that. Wasian, what was your highlight of all of Worlds?
I mean, I think like a highlight play I made, there's like one game where like I won with like 9 Ionia and I beat like 9 Demacia. And there's like one like item anvil where like I think a lot of people would take like RC Belveth. And I had like an Ionia Belveth, but I took like Warmogs for like more survivability. And I'm pretty sure like that Warmogs like allowed me to like beat 9 Demacia and like got me like 3 placements. So I feel like that was like a pretty, and it was also at a point where like placements like really mattered for me. So yeah, I feel like that was like a pretty like clutch play. Unfortunately, the person who I beat was like Connor, who's like another NA rep. And like earlier in the game, I took like Kurum's stat for like 9 Demacia, so I actually felt like so bad about that the whole time.
That is actually the robbery, because if he didn't take that spat, Kurum definitely would have made final lobby.
Yeah, Kurum would have made final lobby.
He had to do it. He had to do it, but
no,
it's so tragic.
Yeah, I had to do it, but it's very tragic.
So
I was literally praying, like I knew he had the open stat. I was just praying there's like no stat on carousel because I knew I would have to take it, and then there was.
Yeah, it was actually. I mean, it was just bad matchmaking. It was 3 NAs in the same lobby, so you guys were just griefing each other, which honestly is the story for a couple of regions. Like Brazil had 3 people in the lobby twice, I think, over the course of it. So it's like it's just brutal when you have so much of that inter-region conflict there. Cass, what was your highlight of all the World Championship?
I mean, just to start, I would say I love Toronto and Wasian having the mentality of like, hey, this could be the only one. Like that's how I see like casting Worlds as well, right? Like, hey, maybe this is the only time I get to do that. So having that experience there, back when I had to play like relegation matches when I was a pro, you have that same mindset of like, hey, this might be the last time I play a pro match. So I think it's a good mindset to have as a competitor. But I think like my favorite overall Worlds memory from one of the games was just sitting and watching the multiple 3-star forecasts come through, because we first see like Bobe hit it really early on stage 4 and then everyone chasing them throughout the game and ending up with like Bobe getting a 3rd after hitting that 3-star forecast super early, and just the reactions of all the crew back in the green room like screaming at the TV while it's happening. It was like a really fun game to watch with just everybody there.
Yeah, that was wild. Bobe hit Shen 3 really fast, but then everyone else started hitting. So then it resulted in Nasus 3 versus Sejuani 3 versus Shen 3. It was a pretty sick game. That was really cool. I mean, for me, it's I don't know when the next time I'm going to go to Spain, because I already told them the next time for following year I'm probably not going to, because I'm probably going to do focus on co-stream. So it's just the fact that I got to be there, and I'm honored that they chose me as the NA rep for 3 times in a row. But moving forward, as you guys may have known, I'm investing a lot in the co-stream, and I plan on co-streaming Worlds. I think it's going to be a really good experience because, as it turns out, no one signed up. Every other region had multiple people sign up to do it, and North America had 0. In fact, what happened was Emily Wang and Soulless asked the morning of Worlds if they could co-stream, and Riot was like, sure, and then they showed up halfway through the day. They showed up late. So that was our NA co-stream experience. No one did it. So I guess I have to. So yeah, that's neither here nor there though. I'm not getting mad at the other NA. But why they don't want to wake up at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. to actually do it. So I totally get it. But I'm gonna be doing that moving forward. And I'm really honored to the GG Tech team and the Worlds team to invite me. And I leave it in your hands, Cass. Please hold down the fort.
Hey, I hope I can go rep NA well and keep going back, because I had a blast and I'd love to do it. Hey, my career started co-streaming, Dan. If I wasn't there, I would have done it.
Fair enough. All right, and on that note, that is it for the Worlds recap. Before we go into the rankings, let's go ahead and do a set of agrees, and it's going to be set 9 focused, and Worlds focused. And if it's something that we've already did, I might move past it. We basically asked a question to the entire panel, asked if they agree. The first one is probably something that has been a hot topic throughout all of the set, but the agree is, in hindsight, set 9.5 will be remembered as the worst competitive set in TFT history. something that's been spouted a lot. I mean, you have even heard my speech previously about how we made it through to the promised land. Let's start off with Toronto. Agreed?
I don't think it was that bad. I disagree. I think there was a lot of room for skill expression. I guess I have a really different mentality compared to the community, basically, where I don't even really think about like if this set is like really bad or not. I just kind of think of how I need to get better at it. You know, it's like if somebody told me in order to make worlds, I need to play Cho'Gath like 50 games in a row, I'd be like, well, I wouldn't be asking like, man, it sucks. Like I need to play Cho'Gath. I'd be like, what augment do I need to take? Like, what's the second best augment I need to take? What's the third best augment I need to take? So I feel like if you really locked in on this set, especially like even the Worlds patch, which a lot of people said was really bad, I think there was a lot of ways to distinguish yourself. There's like a lot of skill expression within the lines. Like I think people are upset that you couldn't play like true flex play, which I think is not a good thing. But I still think that within the realms of what we had, there was a lot of ways to show that you were a better player than other people. And I think that people that were better prepared did better than people that weren't better prepared.
Okay.
So that's my opinion.
I like that answer a lot. I mean, and it shows the competitor mindset. All right, Wasian. Agreed?
Yeah, so I agree with Torontotokyo, which means I disagree with the prompt. Like I actually think like set like 9.5 like tournaments actually had like a lot of skill expression, and I feel like the real trick was like playing the game in a way that didn't have skill expression, like TF into multicasters. Like I feel like that was like the real trick, because I feel like TF into multicasters and like regionals, and you're just like, if that was your line, like you were screwed in my opinion. So I mean, yeah, I feel like Earth, like, I mean, obviously, like you're taking Ancient Archives every game, but there's like so many lines and like so many optimizations. So, I mean, I feel like there was a lot of skill expression. I didn't really think it was that bad. To me, like I thought, like I remember there was like one patch, like I played a tournament and like set 7, and it was like so bad. So I already feel like some of like 7 or like 7.5 might be worse for me.
I want to add one more point. I think what Wasianiverson said about the Earth was really correct, because I feel like you, especially in regionals, like there's just so many people that said there's nothing I could have done, like it was just luck, and there's always so much luck involved. I just feel like I went back into some of those VODs, and I feel like there were lines that were taken that were minus like 2, minus 3, like. I'll give you a good example. In NA, like Ionia was primarily played as a level 7 comp. But if you watched China, Ionia was played as a level 6 comp. And I think that's the way you were supposed to play Ionia. And if you looked at NA regionals, there's so many people that would just sack and then go to 7 and then play like Xayah, Sejuani, or like whatever Xayah board. And it was just like, it was so far away from what I think was fundamentally correct. And those same people would be like, yeah, I mean, it's just dependent. Like, I didn't get Demacia Crest, so I automatically lose, you know? So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of luck. There's a lot of skill. I think people were too quick to complain. This is all completely aside from the enjoyment perspective. I'm not going to talk about that, but yeah.
Okay. That's totally fair. Cass.
This is really funny because I agree with both of them, but I also agree with the prop. Like I agree with them that there was a lot of skill expression still in 9.5, but I agree with the prompt because I think, hey, one set has to be the worst, and you have to take my opinion with a grain of salt because I kind of missed a couple of sets in the middle, so there might have been something worse. I don't know. But for me, yeah, having the set gimmick be everyone starts with Tome, or the set gimmick be everyone starts with Thorn Anvil, or a set gimmick starts with, you know, where everyone's kind of taking these same augments, I felt like it led to a lot of situations where it didn't feel that great competitively. It felt like a lottery, and we had some balance issues with multicasters, right? Those Vel'Koz boards winning super late game comps when it's just a 2-star Vel'Koz. I think that kind of stuff is not that good. I think there were balance issues this set. You know, Mortdog would agree with that. There were balance issues, and overall the gimmick of the set didn't work out so well. That's just my thought. I still agree with them though on the skill expression thing. I think if you come into the tournament and you have a good plan and you understand the skill expression of this set, you play with the parameters and you get better in it, you can still compete and succeed. But I still think, you know, a set has to be the worst, and this one, yeah, to me kind of felt like it was the worst one.
Yeah, this one's really interesting because it doesn't count 9.0 because 9.0 was way better than 9.5 just based off balance issues. I've seen it all, so it's hard for me to actually think of a worse one. My instinct is to disagree with this, but I actually can't think of one that I enjoyed less, especially for the tournaments that mattered the most. I think most people are willing to forgive kind of like the atrocities of the past of like dragons and, you know, the other things like Shadow Ends. If the set ends well, right? If it ends on a balanced state, I think the end of 5.5 was really solid. I think even 8.5, which a lot of people really didn't like hero augments, ended up actually in a pretty decent spot. And it's just like it's hard for me to actually think of a worse like regionals patch / worlds patch tandem. There was a worse regionals patch. I think the striker meta in set 6 was probably worse. But outside of that, it's like kind of hard to think about that that tandem. So it's like it's difficult because it's close. It's close. So if I agree with this, it's a very small agree. I'm pretty much down the middle. And it's interesting that chat also is sort of split. They're here at 60-40. So it's not as clear cut. Either way, I do think that it's important to recognize that we learned a lot from it. And I think Riot even talks about in their dev learning articles. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, Mort Dog every set puts out like an end of set. This is all the stuff we've learned, and here's the mistakes we've made. They've owned up to it, and I think you can already see a lot of that turning, not just in set 10 design, but also even in the PB balance philosophy. So, looking forward to see what they got. And also, I completely agree that these people who say this are also tend to be the players who don't put up results. So yeah, like shut up. Anyways, next one.
I just want to add like one more thing. Like I was kind of talking from like a competitor's standpoint, but I can definitely imagine that from like a viewer's perspective, like 9.5 was like very bad to watch. Like,
oh yeah, I
if you scout the lobby, it's like 4 multis, 4 Demacia. It's like, yeah, like that's not very entertaining or interesting.
And that's totally valid too. If your opinion is the entertainment and enjoyment, like, hey, look, it's a competitive product. I want to enjoy. My enjoyment of this is severely being hampered by it. Then I can totally understand that. And also, it's the most recent one, so maybe it's fresh in your mind. We'll see. As time goes on, maybe people will forgive things in the past. People were telling me at one point that they miss dragons, they miss shadow items. Maybe they'll miss a little bit of Earth Legend popping tomes and stuff. It already happened. People want to go Heartsteel on the new set. They want the Ancient Archives already. It's already happening. I'm just saying. All right, next agree. NA should adopt EMEA's format of 6 games, and then you cut it in half. And then, or rather, NA should adopt EMEA's format. NA's format currently is 6 games, cut half, 6 games, and then cut to the top 8. While EMEA plays 12 games over 2 days, and then cuts to the top 8, very similar to the Worlds format. So I kind of want to hear thoughts because this has been a discussion. Some players in NA have been very vocal that NA's format is very bad and weak. And they'd rather do other different kind of formats. And some people are saying that EMEA is a good format. Wasian, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I have quite a strong opinion on this one, and I think that cups should stay the same, and like regionals and mid set should like swap over. Because like I think cups like they're like not as important, so it's not like fairness and like just like lowering variance is like not like the number one priority necessarily for cups. But I feel like for like the really important tournaments like regionals and mid set, that should be like the number one priority. And like I think like for cups, like people might not want to like stick around for like 12 games over 2 days, like if they're doing poorly. But like I feel like for a tournament like mid-set or regionals, like you still have a lot of chances to like win money or like go on some like miracle run to like make it back into the tournament. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay, I think that's totally fair. And you've actually have experience doing both, like extensively, because you've been to the World Championship. I feel like a lot of people who criticize the format actually haven't played it, and so I think it's interesting to hear that perspective. Toronto, what do you think?
Well, it's actually really complicated. I think Milk makes a really good point. The downside of the good thing about 12 games is obviously the higher sample size. I think better players should always want more sample size, but it's also true that like I would say like there's a solid like 20% of the field of any tournament is basically like non-competitive with like the top players, and like you really want the like even starting from day 2, you kind of want to start eliminating the players who just have like are completely lost on that patch or whatever. So I think I will say agree, because I just think sample size, you just always want more sample size as a better player, or as like a competitive player, but I can see the argument for both.
Okay. Cass, any skin in the game here for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is interesting, right? Because from the player perspective, you know, if I was still playing professionally and this was my game, I'd want 12 games over 2 days for sure, 100%. That's what I would want. But when I think about it from the broadcast perspective, I think that having 6 games and then cutting, especially in these cups with like so many players, being able to cut down the field to help focus the storylines on those at the top and kind of really try and help tell the audience the story of these players and build narrative and do that. It kind of helps to have that cut. But then the question kind of becomes like, how much do people value that main broadcast right now in TFT? A lot of people like watching players. They like watching co-streams. Is the main broadcast something that everyone is so excited about that it should be important in the tournament format? Or should it be something that helps support what is the best tournament format for the players? That's the biggest kind of question. Is it a product for viewership, or is it a product that is entirely focused on the best possible competitive experience? And once you get that answer, then you can kind of have exactly what it should be. For now, I guess I would say disagree on adopting, because I am casting North America. I don't necessarily like the idea of trying to tell the stories with the 12 games of all of these players in it. But I wouldn't, hate the change, because I see it from the competitor side of it as well.
Okay. I think North America changed the format. I don't think it's EMEA's format necessarily, but something should change. I think North America has stagnated a lot. Milk was actually on stream earlier today criticizing Wisdom for not actually innovating the format, and I agree with that concept. I think that part of it is that the only issue is that I don't really think I personally know what that ideal format is. I just know that this one feels like it's just not it. It's kind of like you're looking at a TFT board and you're like, this board's not it, but you just don't exactly know what can you do to improve it. I think that's kind of where we're at with North America in particular, where it's like we just don't know how to cap it higher. But I think the North American format needs something to change. So need to figure out what exactly that is. I'm not entirely sure.
I could agree with that for sure. If that was the prompt, agree.
Chat says 70% agreed. Oh wow, a lot of people actually really like the EME format. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, in the end, we'll see. I think ultimately you have to remember one thing, is that the competitive format is to help also onboard people to the competitive experience, and also it's just as valuable as making sure the top players can get a really good weekend of games in. Okay, the next agree is a tweet from Milk. Actually, we just mentioned him, so this was actually submitted by Kana, one of our moderators of the chat. She said, "I want to hear what people have to think about Milk's tweet." Milk said, quote, "TFT is a game where the more you suck, the more fun it is. So if you have a history of being bad at games, TFT might be for you." All right, let's start off with Toronto here.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really, I agree. This is not a TFT thing, unfortunately. This is a everything in life thing, where when you're kind of like bad at something, or you're just playing it for fun, it's like, it feels like you can do whatever and it works. It's just like, oh, you're playing TFT and you're like, let me just put these random units on my board. Oh man, I won this game, Whereas when you want to get really, really good at something, you want to be at the elite level of something, it's like you got to study, and then afterwards you got to look at the tactics.tools. Like, nobody wants to open up their tactics.tools Explorer and spend like 2 hours like looking at, oh man, what's the 5th best item in like the Slayer comp? Like, hell no. You want to queue up your TFT and then just like put random shit on your board, right? Mm-hmm. But that's just the reality of being competitive at things. Like, if you don't do these things, other people will, and they'll have an edge on you, right? So it's all about optimizing things, and it's not about having fun anymore. It's about winning. And I think that's why generally when you get to the higher level of things, it's not like a bunch of for fun players. It's like people that are really competitive and care more about winning than it is about just having fun. So okay, that's my thought about it.
All right, Cass, what do you think?
I mean, for me, like, anytime I've played a competitive game in my life, I have gone like pretty all in on it. So I think like if I ever suck at a competitive game, I kind of hate it. So I probably disagree. Like, I think it's being really good is fun. Like, there's nothing like the feeling of putting so much effort into a game and then playing against a bunch of people who test that ability with you and coming out on top, right? Like, that feeling to me is like the best ever. But I guess that's like why I went and became a pro gamer and like chased that down. Because
right. You were pro in HOTS and Legends of Runeterra, right?
Here's the Storm, and then I played Legends of Runeterra. I played Hearthstone at a really top level as well. But yeah, I mean, this is it to me, being good at a game makes it more and more fun, because competing against other people at that same skill level makes it that much better. I don't know. I definitely like playing other games casually, but when it comes to competitive games, I think being good makes it better.
All right, Wasian, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Casanova. So, I mean, I disagree with the take. I mean, I just think like winning is fun, and like, I don't know, like when I started playing in like tournaments and like started doing well in tournaments, that just made TFT like 10 times more fun for me. And like nothing changed about the game, but I just feel like just like I don't know, just competing at like with like high stakes and like winning is like really fun. So.
Chat disagrees as well. 66 to 33% split, so 2-to-1 ratio. I understand where Milk is coming from, though. By the way, believe it or not, he's actually trying to convince people to play TFT.
Yeah, for sure.
He's not trying to like flame anything or like. He's actually saying like, "Hey, look, you can still have fun while being bad." I think that's kind of what he's trying to say. I do think it's funny how he phrased it because, you know, I know a lot of people that don't like sucking at TFT. My wife, Taylor. She hates feeling stupid at the game, and it's actually doubly so because she lives with me, and she's like, well, you're so good and I feel so dumb and I don't like feeling dumb. That's why a lot of people don't like playing a lot of hard games in general, because they just don't like feeling dumb. So I think it's case by case. Me personally, I think it's a personal thing. I personally don't mind sucking. I think I care about the progression. I feel like if I'm improving at the game, I'm having fun. And I think TFT is a game you can infinitely improve at, which is why I think I always have fun. Interesting conversation, though. And that brings us to our last agree before we do our rankings as a last part of the show. This one I like to start off with Casanova. TFT is a strategy game. Play-by-play hype like traditional esports shouldn't be part of commentary. This is in direct criticism to the way the Worlds was casted, especially towards the end of the last day. So I want to start off with another Worlds commentator.
And as someone who's partially at fault for the initial people casting like this in TFT, back to set one fight night, I was play-by-playing fights because I thought it was hilarious and fun, and it kind of brought some joy to the experience. I think that play-by-play should be a part of it, but it should be used potentially differently than we use it now, and potentially more sparingly than we use it now. I think play-by-play hype is important when it comes to high-stakes scenarios to help build emotion, but the important part is building the emotion, not just being hype. So that can come in a lot of different forms, and I think that is the way that a lot of casters should start to look at it more and take a hard look at ourselves and think about what is the best way for us to convey this emotion to the audience in these high-stakes moments, and then capture it. And sometimes that's hype. Sometimes it's a fight getting turned around last second by an Aatrox popping out and we got to scream about it, or Soju making it to Worlds and Yumi and Bryce have to just yell our hearts out for a moment. Sometimes that does come into play, but overall I would say disagree, but it's a nuanced take. So
okay. Wasian, what do you think?
Wow, I feel like this is actually like a really hard and loaded question. Like on one hand, like sometimes I watch like chess like casts and stuff, and I actually like really enjoy it. Like I think like the like usually they'll have like grandmasters like commentating the match, and like they have like super like high level analysis and like insight. But like at the same time, I feel like if like someone's like winning Worlds and it's just like no one's like getting excited about it, like isn't that like really boring? So I mean, I guess it should definitely like have a place, I think. But yeah, maybe be used like more sparingly, and like maybe the default should be like insightful analysis. Also, I don't even know if like the average like TFT viewer like even wants like insightful analysis, or if that's just me. Like I think it's actually a really hard question to answer.
Fair enough. And Toronto, you've been around. I mean, you watched all kinds of esports all the time. So what do you think?
I don't know. Like we just said, it's a really difficult question. It's so interesting to me because I feel like TFT is kind of like poker, where most people kind of just like to watch more the individual POVs than they do like watching the full stream product. And like to some degree, even like I remember like your co-stream at regionals did really well. Like, so it's actually, we haven't really seen like the full limit test of like a really well produced co-stream where it's just kind of like more focused on analysis and just like kind of following individual player POVs, kind of analyzing their decisions. Like I could see a world where that kind of becomes the predominant form of like viewing TFT, just because it's just so much easier to follow like a single person than it is to follow like 8 different boards. And like the hype, like the super hype stuff feels like kind of out of place. So I'm not really sure. I think there should be some play-by-play, but I don't know if the current way that we view TFT esports is like correct. I guess is my point. So I'll just say agree.
Interesting. Chad slightly disagrees, by the way. Across it's 55-45, very close. And I think that I actually, it's so funny. It's funny. If you guys are expecting me to give a definitive answer, there's a reason why I'm co-streaming, because I personally believe we don't have the answer yet. I think TFT is actually doing a lot of things differently across the board. And I think storytelling in the game itself is also part of that. Like, the game itself is an interesting genre because we don't, free-for-all battle royale type games are really hard for esports in general, right? Look at Fortnite and Apex and everything. They struggle with like how to actually go through in terms of broadcasting it. And I'm trying to figure that out myself with the co-stream. I think at one point my commentary in TFT was a little bit too much about play-by-play hype. And that's when I said, like, okay, I want to actually make it a lot more about what it actually makes the game interesting and enthusiastic. And I look back on like when I casted set 5 and set 6 and set 7, set 8, and I see a natural progression of like the things that are actually interesting aren't exciting, and vice versa. Sometimes the things that are exciting aren't that interesting. And I feel like I'm trying to understand that myself. So the thing about co-streaming that's really fascinating is I get to explore that up close and personal in real time. And so I think that even a year from now, the co-streaming will even get better for TFT. I hope that I hope that the main broadcast doesn't stop doing what they're trying to do, which is bring a traditional product for people who have traditional expectations. But I also think TFT can do something very different than almost every competitive game experience. I think it could be somewhere between chess and League of Legends World Championship Series. I think there's times where you can do it. And I think that also reflects what I believe in good commentators should do. I think traditional roles, like you're the play hype guy and I'm like the color guy, I think that doesn't exist in TFT. Personally, I think you have to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
But that's just my personal bias on it.
Oh, I think traditional roles in commentary for TFT should be thrown the hell out the window. I full agree with you there.
Yeah,
commentary all the way. Yep.
All right. Well, that's all our agrees. Good discussion, guys. And I'd love to be here talking about the state of TFT, especially esports. But we are here to ultimately do one thing, which is to crown our top 15 players of set 9 based on performance. Remember, there's one thing to keep in mind is that if we're talking about raw ability and skill and like whatever their peak, is of like whatever their ceiling, that's not what we're discussing. That's a lot of the power rankings. This is a final rankings of the set. But first, we're going to start off with the people who got votes. We threw out ballots across and asked who to submit. We had people who got votes but didn't actually place. So we're going to start off with the snub list, people who just narrowly missed on the top 15. And we start off with Vanilla at 19, DQA at 18, DPay at 17, and Philip at 16. And I want to say one thing is that these numbers look a lot lower than every other set. If you compare to our snub list from previous, it's be like, these guys barely got any votes. Did you guys have a lot of ballots? Actually, that's how strong the consensus top 15 was, just putting it out there. It was a huge gap between 16 and 15, like we've never seen before. So the one thing I will say is that it's cool to see players like Philip and Vanilla get shout outs, because DPay and DQA I think they've been DPay and DQA have made it to the list before. And Phil's part of your group, right, Wasian, Toronto?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've seen like a marked improvement on his end as well, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think he's improved like a lot this set.
Okay. And so we'll see whether or not these players can make it in the future. But 16 to 19 is still really good, especially for a list that was so concrete. Even making it and getting a mention, I think, is worth recognition. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce number 15. And we'll start off with what I think could be quite eyebrow raising, but we'll explain a little bit. At number 15 comes Robin Songs, the lowest ranking Robin's ever received in any power ranking ever. And it turns out his performance all throughout set 9 has actually been quite subpar to his standards. At 15, his slash line is 4.3, 49% top 4 rate. But here's the really interesting thing. Robin's win rate is outrageously high. Robin actually has completely converted from what should be a top 4 oriented player to be a player that played for first really often in the set. Fascinating development. He's been talking about how he had some up and down performances, but still 15 feels kind of low. Does anyone want to? Does anyone feel like 15 is too low for Robin, or does that make sense?
15 was actually like exactly where I placed Robin, and I think I had like the exact 15 players that are the 15 players on this list on my own list. I think like there's definitely like some recency bias. Like Robin had like an insane Freelord Cup, and then like the rest of the set was like relatively quiet for him. So like obviously people are gonna remember like the more recent tournaments like more. But yeah, I think people just like expect like a lot out of Robin, and then like when he only has like one kind of like standout performance in like Freelord Cup, and it's like kind of like a long time away, I feel like it's kind of easy to like forget about what he's done, even though he still has like some pretty impressive like AVP and like win percentage.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it's hard because the ranking is really heavily centered around regionals and I guess mid-set. And I think the regionals patch is just really bad for Robin. Like his style as a player, he's obviously like a really strong fundamental flex player. And he kind of got gated into a really bad meta read, which ended up being TF multicasters. Almost every single player that played multicaster TF did really poorly that tournament. So I don't really think it's on him. But at the same time, I don't know if his results justify anything above top 15. I think he'll do better in set 10 though. Like I'm 100% sure.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I think just to give people an understanding of sliding scale, is Robin did have good results. I mean, he won things like Box Boot Camp and Fairly Cup, but remember the sets get weighted more the most important tournaments happen towards the end, and the least important tournaments happen towards the beginning because there's so much more impact and stakes and weight being put on things like mid-set and like things like regionals and going into it. So I think most people were not very impressed with how Robin approached those tournaments, not being able to make really deep runs in that field. But that being said, look for him to come back. I think set 9 was also a little bit off of Robin because I think he spent a lot of time going out and being IRL and taking tournaments less seriously, and also focusing a little bit more on stream. So maybe a little bit of that spectator influence mode. Maybe he's just a little bit offset. He already won a PB tournament to start off set 10. He's already coming in hot. Expect Robin to come back swinging. All right, at number 14 comes in a newcomer to our top 15 based off his Worlds performance in Shurima Cup. It's Connor Is Me. Some high highs and some pretty low lows, not making it far in Noxus Cup. Connor's a really interesting guy. I want to go to either Toronto or Wasian. Who wants to talk about Connor? Because you guys practice with him going into Worlds.
I mean, I actually think that like 14 is like kind of underranked for Connor for like what he achieved. I feel like his Shurima Cup was like very, very impressive. Like he was playing like Ezreal like at a time when like I think everyone was playing like Ornn or something. So he was like going off the path and like doing extremely well with that. And then like his regionals, like I think some people like might try and discredit him because like his primary strategy was like multicasters, which was definitely broken. But like, and I actually think that he played like insanely well in regionals, and I actually think like his mastery over like the multicaster line like might be like the best of like anyone in that tournament. So, like I think that he shouldn't really be discredited at all. Like I think it's like a super impressive performance. So yeah, I mean, I think he was saying like Noxus Cup he got like kind of like IRL diffed and he had like a lot going on. So like that's why he got like day one. But yeah, I mean, I think he had like a super impressive regionals, and in my opinion, he deserves to be like even higher on this list.
Some people who rated Connor rated him pretty highly. Connor got from like Dish Soap actually rated him fairly highly at top 7 alongside Dark Noob. So these are two players who get a lot of respect, and they gave Connor a really big jump. In fact, without these votes, Connor probably would be on the cusp of whether or not he'd make the rankings, maybe like 15 decisively. But just to give you guys a good scope of like who actually believes in Connor's performances. It was pretty interesting. 13. Things are starting to heat up. Another player who we're not entirely sure how to peg from time to time is Casper Wu. Casper Wu makes the top 15 with a third in Shurima Cup and a very narrow miss on top 8 at regionals. And as you know, if you can make final lobby, anything could happen. Casper coming in at 13. I'll go here with Casper and talk about it. I think Casper is a really underrated player and has actually been very strong in almost every metric that you care about. His tournament stats are good. His ladder stats are good. And in general, outside of like one performance in the Failure Cup where I think was quite poor for him in terms of like not making it to a certain cutoff, I think overall he had a really strong set. I actually rated Casper, higher than this as well. So I think it's fascinating. Where Casper gets hurt is that a lot of people who either rank them put him basically at the very bottom or they put him like firmly in the middle of the pack. And so it kind of depends on where you view Casper in terms of his journey. I think part of it is that he shit posts too much in chat and peddles too much like meme tech. I think part of it is that like people don't know how to take him seriously, but maybe that's part of like the way he just presents himself, so that like he gets in tournament mode or he doesn't psych himself out or whatever, because he doesn't want like, you know, people to hype him up. But Casper is seriously good, and I think he's top 10 material for sure in NA. I don't know if anybody disagrees, but that's kind of my spiel on Casper.
I know it's not like actually, I don't think included at all in these like power rankings. We also had a really good ladder set overall. I mean, he qualified based off of ladder for a lot of the events, and he just generally was near the top for a lot of the set. And I mean, I see that Gangly rated him the highest, and then Bryce also had him a bit above this at like 8th. So I know like there's a lot of commentators that are still like valuing highly, and maybe it's his peers, like the other players, as you said, maybe too much meme tech, and they start to devalue his position. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Either way, really happy that he was able to make this list in general, because I do think that he's underrated. And a lot of these people from 11 to 15 in general are players that I think in general get underrated. Go ahead and talk about number 12. And I'm going to go to Wasian for this. It's Torontotokyo. Torontotokyo comes in at number 12 off of a fantastic set 9.5. And, well, 9.0, let's not talk too much about that. But finishing out the second half of the season incredibly strong. Second, and then top 8, and then 10th. What do you think? Or sorry, actually, this is not.
Yeah,
this is the wrong text. It's LCQ.
I think Noxus Cup is supposed to be LCQ.
It's supposed to be LCQ. Sorry about that. Yeah. I did these graphics. Dench. Okay, Wasian, you go.
I mean, anyways, I mean, I actually think like Torontotokyo is like a very, very, very strong fundamental like player, and like I don't think he's gonna be like going away anytime soon. Like I think the way that he like thinks about the game is like very similar to me actually, because like when we like VOD review together, I feel like we like agree on like so many decisions and like so many spots. So yeah, I mean, I think like he'll be like a super strong player like now and going forwards. I think LCQ, like I think self-admittedly, like he felt like he almost didn't deserve to like make it through, and like it was a bit of high roll. But then I feel like going into regionals, like I feel like he practiced so much and like improved so much, and I actually do think that he was like one of the top players at regionals, and like I think he's like very deserving of the world spot. And then worlds, like yeah, I think there were some like bad beats on the second day, but I think like he was definitely like a player who had like the potential to like qualify for the final lobby. And like once you're in the final lobby, like anything can happen. So yeah, I think super highly of him, and yeah, I think he definitely deserves to be here. I might have even put him like higher than this as well.
You put him exactly here. So, but I mean, that means that you feel like it's accurately represented. I want to toss it to Toronto, but I want to add one thing before I do. You didn't even rank yourself, man.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't feel like it's good form to rank yourself. I don't know. It feels really hard to objectively rank yourself. I think what I will say is the other cups before LCQ, like the bad performances, I don't think was luck. I think it just wasn't that good of a player. I think I really made the largest advancement as a player going into LCQ. And that's kind of like every tournament after LCQ, I thought I was going to do well. Going into regionals, I said I would bet on myself personally to place above a 4.3. Like I wouldn't say that it's to average higher than a 4.3, because I just felt like really confident in my own ability, just what was going on in practice. And then at Worlds as well, I thought for sure I would like more than 50% of the time I would average above a 4.3 is how I felt about it, because that's just how the practice kind of showed me that like the players aren't unbeatable kind of deal. So yeah.
Okay.
Look, Wasian glazed this guy up, but I'll glaze him up a little bit more, because I think the improvement we saw from Toronto was like more than we've seen out of any player like that I can remember, coming from those early cups and then jumping to the next, jumping, of course, LCQ and then onwards. And I think that every time we've had an interview with him, and the way that he talks about the game, and the fact that you're like 10 plus year esports vet, you understand what it is to be a competitor and to like improve and try and go after a game. I think the biggest winners in TFT right now are the people who are prepping with Torontotokyo and actually like talking about the game with you, because I think that rubbing off on other strong North American players is just going to level up the region a lot. So, I mean, that's kind of how I see it. I think when we look at the set holistically, like Toronto coming in at 12th, kind of makes sense, right? Because you have to look at the set holistically. And at the start, this guy was trash. This guy was terrible. And then completely turned it around, right? Completely improved and became one of the best players in North America. And I think like that still you should make it into the top parts, but then like you can't be too high up if you were that bad at the start of the set, right? Like there's a balance there.
Nice. I like that. No, I like that. And I think I like your humility. Unfortunately, Wasian did rank himself. Just gonna spoil it here. I do like your humility. And I think that, especially, I think within the range that you were within, I think that is entirely fair. And for people who are curious, Toronto decided to rank Philip and Gipe instead of himself, for example. So I thought that was really cool. At number 11, I'll take this one. It's POK. He moved up. He was at 14 last set. He's at 11 this set. And so Precedent, ever on the improvement grind. POK is back. He had an amazing set 9.0. And then 9.5, he not only did he not sign up for the Noxus Cup, he bombed out of regionals very hard in a disappointing day one exit. To the point where I think Precedent actually, had his first like very real do I even want to do TFT type of existential crisis thing? Because I think he took the entire like set to play one tournament because he didn't play Noxus Cup, and then he got day one, so it felt like a very like unsatisfying experience for him. Thankfully, that's not going to be the case. He's going to be back for set 10, and if you look at set 9.0, my God, this guy was on fire. He got top 4 in a couple of events, and he was also very much threatening other like other tournaments such as the Box Bootcamp, for example. So Precedent, he also was like at rank 1 to try to prove all the doubters wrong, right? Shout out to Non-Tom, who like really put Precedent on blast for like being like a guy who had so much ego and couldn't really back it up, and Precedent just like held rank 1 for a long time and like kind of pushed for it. So overall, I'm really proud of him. His stats are fantastic. And the one thing, okay, it looks like his win rate was way too high. It's actually lower than that. Must have been, I think it's 12.5%. But overall, a fantastic set for Precedent. Just wish that he finished a little bit stronger. And regionals weighted very heavily. Okay, let's go into number 10, which is another player. I think I want to go to Wasian for this one. It's Darth Noob cracking the top 10 from a person who didn't make top 15 at all to this set, getting power ranked multiple times and pushing to the top 10. I feel like you're the player that knows him the best out of all 4 of us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think like, I actually think that Darth Noob is like probably like the smartest player that like I know. Like the way he thinks about the game is like so good. And I feel like he's also like, the thing is usually like players that are like very smart, I feel like they often like have like an ego and they're not willing to play in like a degen style, but like funnily enough, like Darth is like very willing to play like a degen style. I mean, I would say his performance at like Cups was like very quiet, but I think like making the final lobby of like the 2 biggest events was like super impressive. This one I can confidently say I actually did put him higher than 10th because I do think he's like a super good player, and I think like he's gonna get underrated just because like on this list because he didn't win anything, but like I mean, I think there's only like two or maybe 3 players that like made the final lobby of like mid-set and regionals, and those are definitely the 2 most important events. So,
agreed. Toronto, have you talked to Darth a lot at all?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a bit. We're not like really deep in conversations, but I think he's definitely the smartest, pure like raw intelligence player in TFT. And yeah, there's not much to say. I mean, his results speak for themselves. I think these rankings always come down to mid-set, finale, and NA regionals as being the most important, and he did really well in both, so he deserves it.
Darth's story is really fascinating as a guy that was like a rank 1 hyper roll grinder like a couple sets ago, right? Like hyper roll, like kind of like that meme playlist that other people who have grinded have done pretty well in. But like he was the first person to do that. Like without Darth, you wouldn't have people who say like, hyper roll can actually be pretty good. So really interesting to see Darth come from there to where he is now, where he's kind of a trusted source of information. He's a subreddit moderator for the competitive TFT, and also kind of just like helps a bunch of people out in terms of questions. Like anytime people have like things about TFT inquiries, it's always Darth that's coming through. And so love to see him perform. The only thing is that he has hit or miss performances, right? What stops him from perhaps moving up more is, you can't really like have too many weaker performances where you get like in the 40s or 50s or 60s. Not that he's there in that 50-60 range, but if you can tidy up some of that, we'll see where you can go. The other thing, look at his stat line. He has a 5% win rate. I was like, is that right? And I looked up some of his lobbies. Like, this dude does not win lobbies. This guy is a top 4 machine whenever he's clicking with it, but also goes 8th. He has like a really high 8th rate and a really high top 4 rate in conjunction to that, which is really fascinating. So yeah, this guy has a really interesting play style, and I look forward to see what he's got in the future.
He might have been even higher too, but Gangly, somebody who I know values consistency quite a bit, left him off of the ballot, actually. Surprisingly, though, I think top 15, I think easy for Darth, but Gangly decided against it, and a lot of other players, had him at like 6th through 9th instead of that 10th spot where he ended up falling.
All right. At number 9, we're going to the single digits here. We got Goobums. Goobums had a pretty quiet set overall. And he did have one really notable performance, but he also had consistent performances in the sense that it always felt like he was threatening within a pretty good range, like, the 11th and 15th, and getting a second at mid set. But Noxus Cup rather. But I will admit, I did not rank Goobums very highly. And so who actually did rank Goobums very highly here? That's here, actually. The highest person to rank him was Torontotokyo. So why don't you talk about Goobums here?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody always considers Goobums really strong. Like, we have a mental bias for thinking Goobums is strong because he's always within like the top 5, 10, top 10 of ladder. He's always doing really well, consistent performances in tournaments. So it just doesn't feel right to leave him outside of the top 10, in my opinion. Like, if you look at his breadth of results in this set, like, he just consistently does well, and he's always high on ladder. So I feel like he deserves a good spot because of that.
Yeah. I will say that is starting to change. This might be one of the last few times we might be doing something like this, especially as sets continue to heat up, because the legacy factor and the eye test only goes so far, I think, when you start measuring against like how competitive the field actually is. But I do think Goobums absolutely is top 10. I mean, at his peak, I think this set specifically, when he was like in form, this guy was top 3 in NA. Like, I think he was right there with Just Open Satsuko at his very peak. And I think that's partially why people remember that, and the knowers know. And I think that's all you really need to know about it. All right, at number 8, could it be anybody else? It's K3 Soju. Soju comes in at number 8, being a very interesting results if you look at it. It feels almost like 8 is too low for Soju, because look at how consistent he's been throughout all of set 9, despite the fact that he's kind of up to his usual shenanigans. He's kind of forefronting it, running it down. He went to GM, he stayed triple digits, the whole thing. But when it came down to it, this guy knows how to put some pants on. Soju, going up against Soju in regionals, this guy was actually a threat to win it all going into the final lobby. Wasian Toronto, what do you make of Soju set 9? I feel like 8 is a little bit low, don't you think?
Okay, I actually screwed up on my ranking. I actually think, so what I've always said about Soju is I think that if he were taking the competitive side of this game completely seriously, he would pretty much permanently be top 5. It's just that he's like trolling over half or like 70% of the time and kind of like doesn't care except for like 3 days before the tournament. But the thing is, like, Soju is one of the strongest fundamental players in NA. Like, he literally trolls on purpose on ladder, like, to entertain the fans. So it's kind of hard because his persona is known as somebody that's intentionally trolling. But if you notice, like, whenever he needs to climb for a snapshot, he literally averages a 2 over the course of 30 games and climbs like 600 LP. So it's like, we know that he is good when he wants to try. He just doesn't try very often. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it.
We know. We know.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't think that much more needs to be said. I mean, the fact that I think if anything, it could also be used to benefit him, right? Like, the fact that he is doing all this and still maintaining effectively top 8 in the entire region, despite how competitive things have gotten, is immensely impressive, right? Because he has a bunch of responsibility on his shoulders to like almost be the face of North America and be, known as this entertainer and deal with harassment. Quite frankly, like, Soju does get a lot of benefits, but he also has to deal with a lot of harassment. I think it's fantastic. This has been a great set for Soju. I think he should be very proud of it.
It feels like one of his better set, like one of his best sets stat line wise when you just look at the placements in tournaments, right? Like if we look at those placements for like any other player or like a lot of other sets, that it feels criminal that this isn't in the top 5. But I know there's a lot of like other insane stat lines to come as well. So.
All right, coming in at number 7 is one of the highest that we've had of a newcomer that wasn't just straight up like winning the world championship type thing. Is T-Lides. T-Lides comes in at 7th after doing very well at mid-set and regionals. We talked about the weight of that. In contrast to Darth Noob, he did get to World Championship with regionals, and he had a very respectable showing at the World Championship, although didn't actually, I think he fizzled out towards the end. But I kind of watched some of his games, and it felt like some of them were unplayable. Did either of you VOD review like extensively with T-Lides? I think Toronto, you did, right?
Yeah, we VOD reviewed a little bit because other people were busy. Wasian had midterms and other people weren't online at the time that we VOD reviewed. But he's a really... I felt like it was only a matter of time before he had his breakthrough set, because generally people that are always really high ELO on ladder, like unless they have a choking problem, I feel like they kind of just end up doing well in tournaments eventually, you know? And I feel like this was T-Li's kind of breakout set where everything just clicked for him at the right time. He's really smart about the game, really fundamentally strong, and, you know, the luck went his way. So he just had good results this set, I feel like.
Yeah, Wasian, what's your read on T-Lides having competed with him? Because you guys actually have been competing around the same length, by the way, like sometime end of set 7 and then into set 8 and 9.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he's like an amazing player, and I think he's like not going anywhere. Like I think we'll be like consistently seeing him like on the power rankings and like set 10 and like more sets to come. He's actually one of the players that like I watch like a lot to like learn and stuff. Like I actually like watching his stream a lot to like learn, because I mean I think he's like the way he plays the game is like very smart, and like I think there's like a lot to be learned there. I think he like self-admitted, like when we were talking about it, like I think nerves kind of like got to him and like almost held him back a little bit at Worlds, and like I feel like his meta read was like maybe just like a little bit off. Like I feel like he was leaning like a bit too much into like the Noxus line. But I think like he had like an insanely consistent set, and I think he's like an amazing player and definitely like super deserving of this ranking.
Okay, and it's just interesting, right? Because we talked about Darth Noob, the having the pin set and regionals performance, but part of the reason why he's above people like Soju is because he had those highs, which are really important that people are looking for. Not to be outdone, his practice partner, as the narrative has said, the world champion before him, Replay, comes in at number 6 with some pretty impressive stats, except for like one very, let's just ignore the failure cup. There's a little bit of an eyesore there, but outside of that, if you took out his failure cup stats, this guy's stat line is extremely impressive. Cuts down to 4.1, above 60%, and everything across the board. Why is everyone spamming fraud in chat? Can someone explain? Is this guy a fraud, Wasian? You played with him before in the previous World Championship. Is this guy a fraud?
Okay. Okay, this is like kind of gonna sound like flame. I don't mean it in like a flame way. I feel like Replay is like one of the players that proves that like LP doesn't mean everything, because his LP is not that high, but he's like a beast in tournaments. But yeah, I mean, I feel like his consistency and like his play in tournaments is actually like super insane. Like I think it's just maybe he just finds it like hard to take ladder seriously or something. But yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, I think he has I think him and Casper Wu are two brothers from different mothers. I feel, in some ways, like it feels like they love to make people think that they suck, almost to like lure them into like into like to lower their defenses and catch them off guard.
So that's why he went 107th at Freljord, so everyone would think he sucks, and then he just smurfs the rest of the season. I mean, really, like you, as you said, you get rid of that, and this is like akin to his stat line in the previous set, right? He just outstanding across the entire board. Freljord, of course, you know, hey, sometimes you get one, right? You get one in a set where you get to just bomb.
100%. And I do think that a couple of things go differently at regionals, or a couple of things go differently from mid-set. If you watch some of his games, he knows that he could have improved a lot. As much as Replay loves to troll and whatnot, the one thing that I think is always impressive is his improvement mindset. I think he is really strong relative to some of the average players that I see in tournaments. So really looking forward to see he can bounce back, because I think 6 is a little bit low for him. We know what his ceiling is. And also a great way to follow up a good performance, because we've had some people who also had incredibly strong performances in sets, and the following set, they're not even on the rankings. The fact that he was here and a couple things go his way, he can move up is really, really impressive. Well done. All right, at number 5, this is where it starts getting real big and real tough in terms of who you decide to rank. At number 5 is when we start getting a lot of consensus, but also you rearrange a ton. It's PP. Dish Soap comes at number 5, which I think is actually his highest ranking thus far, which is a shocking statement to say. The fact that this guy is top 2 every single power rankings, and at one point had the longest streak we've ever seen at rank 1 for power rankings in North America, coming at number 5. It sounds weird, but if you think about it, it kind of makes sense relative to some of the other players that we have yet to reveal. I want to go to Toronto here about Dish Soap, because you've kind of been like an onlooker a lot for him, and then you're playing against him now. What was it like going up against Dish Soap a lot this set?
This is where I feel like the list gets really interesting, because I think if we asked every single player in NA who is like the second best fundamental player, if not the best fundamental player in NA, it's Dish Soap. Like almost every person will say it's Setsuko and Dish Soap, right? So I guess it's like kind of like we're kind of like waiting for Dish Soap to really have like his breakthrough, just like crush everything, win every tournament set, and it kind of hasn't happened yet. So it almost feels like Dish Soap as a player deserves to be number 2 at least, but he's number 5, which I feel like is really low for him. So I kind of like wonder, like, do you think like it's kind of like luck that he hasn't like had like a really like just dominant set yet, or do you think it's like something like about his playstyle? Because I feel like I respect him so heavily as a player for him to be like number 5 on the ranking. Like, I don't know.
I think it's because he hasn't gotten the most important thing that the other players above him have, which is a Worlds appearance, and to prove it on the world stage. And that's incredibly difficult. You have 2 chances so far this past set. And to add on to what you said, like I said, I want to reiterate, this is the highest Dish Soap has ever been on a final rankings of a set, which is just wild to think about. So it's actually really interesting. I think he's had a really strong set of tournament performances, but in general, he still has really good stats. I do think that variance is part of it. I think he just needs time. I hope he doesn't get impatient. I know the stream to come 48th spawned the meme. If you need a supplement on that, you can type !Dish Soap in my chat. But we'll see. I think that his consistency will just net him that World's performance or World appearance over time.
I think it's crazy to think about like Dish Soap, where some people feel like, oh, Dish underperformed expectations, and then this is still the scoreline that we're looking at, right? Like the fact that the weight of expectations on Dish are so high that this is like disappointing, when this looks like some of the, like most insane stats that you would see in a strategy game from players.
It's just the beginning.
This is kind of unrelated to his ranking, but I actually think Dish Soap stream has like single-handedly made like the NA ladder like much stronger. Like even myself, like when I was like a low challenger player, like improving a lot, like I would watch his stream like every single day, and I think there's so many like challenger players, it's like, oh, like I suck on this patch, like all right, it's time to go watch like a 6-hour Dish Soap VOD. Yeah. So like I'm pretty sure he's actually made the entire server like significantly stronger.
I do that when I'm not understanding a patch well enough, like before a cast, I will watch a long Dish Soap VOD to just like help fully understand some more like nuance in the patch. Everybody uses it. Everybody's copying his homework.
Oh, and it happens to other regions as well. And I'm really glad for his stream success as well. It felt like Setsuko hit that spike earlier. I think Dish Soap's really coming on strong while keeping up the quality of his play. I hope he keeps it up. Good job, man. All right, here we go into the top 4. And once you start seeing these top 4s, it all kind of makes sense. It's Milk. Mr. Milk Guy comes in with a pretty hot stat line, 4.2, 60%, and almost a 21% win rate. And this guy, if you look at it, made 4 final lobbies, which is incredibly difficult and immensely consistent. You talk about consistency. Yeah, you're able to get like a 3rd in a tournament at regionals and 5th at, not at the mid-set, whatever. But this guy was in contention to win 4 tournaments out of the 5. And by the way, he topped it off with winning the DSG trial. So he actually did end his tournament or end his season with a win, which you could argue is really important as well because he got signed by DSG. So Milk coming in at number 4. It almost feels like, man, if this guy's number 4, who are the top 3, or rather, what does the top 3 have to do to really outperform this guy? Incredible consistency, Cass.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely insane, right? Like, normally I would see this kind of consistency, and since this is a strategy game, I value consistency over a lot of things, and I would put this guy number 1. So as you said, the fact that this is number 4 is pretty ridiculous. I think the big thing about Milk is he kind of did what Soju did this set, but just a little bit better, right? He was even more consistent. He played, obviously a vastly different playstyle than Soju. He played a lot of first to wraith, but even with the first to wraith playstyle, he still netted this 60% top 4. And I think that's like one of the craziest stats with especially how Milk plays the game, that he was able to still keep that up.
I just need to add something. You know how Wasian just said like Digital makes like the server better? I'm pretty sure you get worse if you watch Milk stream because he always does like.
Wait, what?
Like the thing is, he always like he'll like one trick Kaisa to like rank 1, and then you look at his stream, it's like, all right, all I gotta do is I gotta build Shojin JG, and then I'm gonna win the game. And then you do it in your own game, you just go 8th. Like you go 8th, it's like, and then they'll go like multicasters like 40 games in a row, and they'll go top 4 every single game. You're like, TFT is so easy. Like I'm just gonna play multicasters as well. And then you do it, and you just go 8th. So it's like, it's actually insane. Like, I feel like that's the craziest thing about him as a player is like, he knows how to play every line so well, but at the same time, like he can just pivot to playing like standard at any point. He plays like the gimmick lines because he knows that they're super OP, but at any point he can just be like, all right, I'm gonna play standard, and then I'm gonna do just as well, which is a thing that I don't think any other TFT player can do, unironically.
I think that is really well said. I feel like Milk is one of the hardest players to emulate, and is partially what makes him such a unique player. It's also it's also why Soju is almost like a super fanboy. I actually rarely see Soju like legitimately fanboy for people, and I think he's a legit fanboy for Milk because I think because Soju's like almost in awe of the way Milk plays TFT because he knows he can't do that himself in some ways. Because every time he talks about Milk, dude, his eyes light up. He's like, Milk is the best fundamental player. He's just insane. He's the best player, like, ever, blah, blah, blah. And it's just great. It's great to see their friendship. It's great to see Milk have good result. I want to see him back one more time. Milk said that he needs to win Worlds once before he quits TFT. And he's getting pretty close every single set. Let's see what he does in set 10. And now we reach the podium, the top 3 of our final rankings. The first one is a player who had a really high a couple of tournaments, as well as some really strong performances overall, and his best performance to date in any final rankings. A guy that's been here since the very beginning. It's Kurimex. Kurimex had 2 wins in the Failure Cup and the mid-set finale, and that's what got him to the World Championship. And if it wasn't for Wasianiverson griefing his spatula in a 3 NA lobby at the World Championship, who knows? Kerm could have made final lobby, and we don't know what happens after that. Anything can happen in checkmate. But Kerm at 3 is outstanding, and I also want to toss it to Wasian. Wasian, you ranked Kerm at number 1.
Yeah, I did actually put Kerm number 1. I just felt like the person who was number 1, like to me, that criteria was like someone who has like won like some tournaments, like one or more tournaments in the set, someone who's made worlds, and like also someone who has displayed like consistency throughout the whole set. And to me, I felt like Kerm was like the only player that like kicked all of those categories. Like he won Freylord and mid set. I feel like he was like very, very consistent throughout like every tournament except like maybe like Shurima Cup, but I think he like wasn't like as like invested in that just because he already won Freylord, he already qualified to mid set. And then like yeah, in like 9.5, like he was like, I feel like he was trying very hard, like trying to prep for worlds. And I feel like he did very well. And I think like Earth meta was probably like not a good thing for him. And he still managed to do like above average at Worlds. And like I feel like if it was like a different meta, he could have done like even better at Worlds. So yeah, I just felt like he ticked off all of the boxes of like someone who would be like the number 1 player of the set to me. And I feel like there's no one else who did that.
I think it's very respectful you say. And I also want to chime in here as a longtime onlooker of the TFT competitive scene. It's just great. There's nothing like watching Kerm succeed in TFT because he truly wears his emotions on his sleeve. You can just you almost just hear every single time he talks about a tournament how much passion and how much dedication, how much he wants it. And so being able to see that come to fruition, bear fruit, and hit for him to have success. There's very few people I enjoy watching have results in tournaments because like, and this is not to like call out anyone in particular, but there's so much like people that come on and they're just like, oh yeah, I'm really happy and I high rolled and you know like it could have been anyone, but it was me today and I'm really thankful. But like Kurum, I mean, dude, he pops off. He's screaming. He's probably not wearing clothes, and then he puts on clothes and turns on his cam. He cries on stream. It's just like you can see how much it means to him from the very beginning. And watching him go through his journey in TFT is truly special. I want to see him continue to succeed, and it's just such a good time. I call him the people's champ of TFT in North America, and I think it's a very accurate description because when he wins, everybody wins. Okay, and on that note, despite Kurum's fantastic set, he is not in the top 2. And so with this, we're going to talk about top 2. The way it's going to go is we're going to, I'm going to go to Torontotokyo because I'm pretty sure you know what's going to happen here. But I'm going to add something else at the very end of it. So without further ado, in second at silver is Wasianiverson. Wasian got first at regionals in one of the most dominant performances we've seen in regionals yet. And then came very close, if you don't factor title, to winning the World Championship as well. And also had insane stats. I want to show you guys the previous slide one more time. At number 3, Kurum had 4.2 average placement, a top 4 rate of 57 and 11%. Very strong and respectable. Now let's go back to Wasian, and you guys can see 3.5 average placement. 70% top 4 rate, 22% win rate, and I'm cutting off some of those decimals. Wait, and you're like, this is bad for me. I'm not really a top 4 player. You top 4 70% of your games this tournament, and these are tournament games. You can't be that bad at top 4. All right, now I'm done talking. Toronto, take it away. Talk to me about Wasian.
Yeah, I think Wasian is probably the biggest showcase that this set 9.5 actually has a way higher skill cap than people think. Because if you just think logically about the sample size of games that Wasianiverson did well in towards regionals, worlds, is just like it was a sample size of like 40 games or something like that, where he was averaging a 3, and to average a 2.5 at regionals is probably like. It might be the most dominant performance that we've ever had from a player ever in the history of regionals. So I just feel like, how can it be luck? You know, it's like it reached a point where it can't be luck, is how I feel. You know what I mean? It's like,
yep.
That. So he deserves it, right? I think he was the best rep. I think everybody knew that he was going to do well at Worlds just because he had reached like an edge on the field where it was like, it couldn't have gone wrong, is how I felt like. But I didn't want to say it to him because that just sounds like a massive
jinx. Not here.
But now that it's like post everything, it's just like, yeah, this just can't be luck. That's just how I feel like.
Okay, Cass, very briefly talk to me about Wasian as well from a caster's perspective. You followed his journey.
Yeah, I mean, I just the stats were the biggest thing. That it was the talk of the town at Worlds going in. It's why Wasian was a heavy favorite among the casters. I had EU convinced, the EMEA talent convinced that Wasian was like potentially the best player at the tournament. Right? They were like, yeah, Wasian's probably going to win this thing. And I mean, it shows you kind of kept that consistent throughout the event, and it really is that point where the stats speak for themselves.
All right, Wasian, you are second, and we did spend some time glazing you. Wasianiverson. What are your thoughts on being number 2?
Yeah, thank you guys. Being number 2, honestly, like, I'm kind of glad that I'm number 2. So something that's kind of funny is like, if I ranked myself number 1, I could have been number 1. But I feel like this is like a wrapped episode that's like supposed to like encompass like all of like 9 and 9.5. And I just feel like I didn't have like the consistency to be number 1, so I'm actually kind of glad that I'm number 1. But I'm very honored to be here at number 2.
That's actually, again, very man. You two are great guests. You guys handle such nuanced topics with grace, and you guys are also speaking very humbly. It's very nice. It makes it easy to cheer for you guys. Wasian is completely right. If a single person, I just want to put this out there, if a single ballot swapped Wasian with whoever finished number 1, which I'm pretty sure most people can guess at this point, then it would have been a tie for 1. That's how close it was. A single person decided to put, hey, Wasian 1, this other person 2. it would have been a double way tie for first place, which would have been a first time in our rankings history. But without further ado, no more stalling. At number 1, the most respectful, the most humble, the most calm, patient, and understanding TFT player in North America, Setsuko claims number 1 in the rankings. His first final finish at number 1. And we talked about the banana stats. He has it all. Incredible finishes throughout the tournaments. First in 2 of them with Shurima and Noxus Cup. Even better average placement than Wasian by 0.1, 3.4, 71% top 4 rate, and a 28.6 win rate. An absolutely earth-shattering win rate across the entire field in what is one of the strongest regions in all of TFT. Unbelievable set from Setsuko. And what's wild is, he didn't even make the World Championship. And by his own measurements, I mean, he had a great set, but he didn't make it to Worlds. Incredible performance from Setsuko, and I it's really hard. It was very close between 1-2 and 2-1, but if you look at it from this lens, it's really hard, Cass, to argue against Setsuko number 1.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't have a ballot. You know, maybe I'll get a ballot eventually, but I would have put Setsuko number 1 as well. The big thing going into regionals, this 3-4 was a 3-1, which is stupid. He was absolutely gapping everybody, and then in regionals, I mean, I hate to say this while we're crowning him number 1, but I genuinely think he choked a bit towards the end of that tournament. I think there were a couple games that just were uncharacteristic of him. If you were in the stream watching his POV, which I was during that time, because I was not casting at that moment, he felt flustered and he didn't quite get there at the end. And I'm scared to think of a Setsuko who can get past all of that, who can finally just break every single bit of that anxiety and pressure that gets to him, because he is an absolute TFT machine, an absolute monster. The stats are insane. And I mean, this is a guy that you coming in, I was saying this guy is the best in the world, and then he didn't make it to Worlds. And I think that's you know, just when it comes to a strategy game, that can happen. I want to see him get back to Worlds. I want to see what he does in set 10.
All right, let's get some comments from the other people. Let's start off with Wasian, the guy that Setsuko narrowly beat by just 1 ballot vote. Setsuko number 1. That feels right to you, yeah?
Oh, I mean, I'd curve number 1 just because of like the Worlds factor, but it definitely doesn't like seem wrong that Setsuko's number 1. Like, the thing is, like, these Shurima Cup and Noxus Cup first places, like, I feel like the other thing they don't show is just like how dominant like that first place was. Like, those tournaments, like, second place is like not even close, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like even in all of Worlds, like, I can't say that there's like any player on the world stage where it's like, oh, like, I don't want this person in my lobby, but like Setsuko is like one of those people where it's like I actually like don't want him in my lobby.
Interesting. Toronto, some comments on Setsuko's first number 1 finish.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough because his mid set and his regionals was bad. But the thing is, like, it's hard to argue in my eyes that he's not the best player in the world, and his name has that weight. Like, I almost feel like if you swapped Setsuko's name with Karamix, then Karamix would be number 1. But it's kind of like what he does, like those tournaments, like the way he dominated them. I think one of them he averaged like a 1.9 or something like that, something crazy, which was 1-1-1-1-5-1. Like, there's no other player in any that can do that. You know, like, it doesn't really matter how hard you high roll almost. So it's just like, he's just, yeah, I think he's my vote for the best player in the world, period.
Oh, man. I can't figure out a better way to wrap that up then. Setsuko, congratulations. Last set, he finished number 2. Somewhat controversially because he had arguably a better set by making it to the final lobby, but replay, claiming the World Championship, being number 1, having a great set, wasn't the end up finishing number 1. Setsuko somehow even raised the stats on this set and was able to claim that number 1. Congratulations. And congratulations to the entire top 15. I think set 9 was a fun journey. I'm really happy to see all the people who are new as well as the old people able to fight for those new rankings. We have a couple more things to do before we clean up the show. We're almost at the very end, I promise you guys. Thanks for hanging in there. It's been a long show. First is people ask, what happened to fantasy? You guys did regionals a long time ago. We never had an episode since. Here we go. The regional fantasies draft was won by Soju, and Soju when asked for a comment, said, "Wow, I actually won something this set." He went first place. Second place went to myself. Precedent went third, and Bryce went dead last again. Shout out to the draft or the top pick for Connor by Precedent, able to get 90 points for $1. That was pretty impressive. Which brings us to our fantasy for the entire season. I'm so sad Bryce could not be here tonight because he had to spend time with his wife with a date he accidentally double booked. Or rather, he gets to spend time with his wife. He's recently had twins, so if he has a night off, he should take it. But if there's one thing that you look at who finished last in every single fantasy draft. It was either Bryce or his replacement, who was co-hosting Raditz, who came here for the mid-set finale. Bryce, man, I hope you're having a good time on vacation with your wife. But if this is what it's going to be like, I'm going to need a new co-host of Fantasy Draft against. I'm probably going to ask Wasian then at one point, because this is not a competition, man. What is even going on?
The real reason he didn't show up today. This is the real reason, Dan.
Right?
This is why they called me in to replace him.
He couldn't even face the music. All good. All good. All right. And that's it. In terms of closing, let's go ahead and do some final announcements. This has been a great set overall. The first is Box Bootcamp's coming up for set 10. This is really, really exciting. It's another ladder-based tournament. This time it's kind of like officially endorsed by Riot. I mean, before it was, but now there's all these fancy graphics. A lot of money on the line. There's tens of thousands of dollars. A lot of competition. It's going to be a really good time. Make sure you guys support your favorite streamers. And I signed up. Hopefully, a lot like Wasian. I think Wasian, you said you signed up, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Toronto, I'm not sure if did you sign up? I feel like this is not really something that you do in general.
I signed up, but I don't even think I qualified for the
requirements.
So, yeah.
All right. Okay, chat, we're coming up on it. Chat saying DSG. That is something that is potentially coming soon. Congratulations to DSG for making it to 1 year. But the big thing is, they said that they didn't sign just a few people to DSG or just Milk. They said they signed 10 players to DSG, the TFT Vegas Open. Wasian, any comments?
Oh, maybe one day that'll be me.
All right. We'll see. Keep an eye out for that. And congratulations to Toast again for making money. I think he said he broke even, or he didn't lose that much money for the first time all year long going into November. All right, and on that note, that is it. Let's go ahead and get some final comments and tie up this bad boy and say goodbye to set 9. Let's start off with Torontotokyo.
First of all, thanks for having me on, Froden. It was really fun. It's a pleasure to be on here. You know, a lot of people think set 9 wasn't very good. I liked it personally. I thought it was pretty fun, and but I do think set 10 will be better.
All right, Wasian.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. Like, thank you so much for having me on, and thanks so much for doing like co-streams for the cups. Like, I'm pretty sure like half the players, when they're dead, they just like tune into your co-stream and watch. I know, at least I do. So, yeah, I mean, but I think it makes like DTIYDK and like the co-streams. I think it just makes it so much more interesting for viewers. Like, you actually get to learn about the players, and just like have like a really good understanding of what's going on. So, yeah, I think it's awesome what you do for the TFT scene.
Awesome. Thank you. It's a pleasure. The pleasure's mine. And I really couldn't do it with really all of you all. And also, I hope next time, if you want to jump in between games and complain about your RNG, you guys aren't the kind of people to do that. But one thing I want to do with the coach stream is talk to more of the players in the middle of the tournament. I think it's actually really fun to do kind of that kind of stuff. But if you want to focus, I totally get it. Casanova, any last words before we do our special announcement? We have a special announcement at the very end of the show.
Thanks for finally having me on with this. Set 9 was actually my favorite set. I know that sounds kind of crazy with how much I've complained, and the fact that I said 9.5 was the worst competitive set earlier, but I absolutely loved it, and I'm really looking forward to set 10.
All right, sounds good. And now we come up to the very big special announcement that we've been building up towards. This is something that I've been working on for a long time, and something that I hope that people will appreciate, because it's only the logical next step. Don't Talk If You Don't Know is officially expanding to the EMEA region. That's right. We usually focus on North America and North America only, but starting from set 10 onwards, we are actually going to have a secondary show that's going to be dedicated to covering all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. EU has been waiting for some time to get their opportunity and find out who's the top players and tell a lot of their storylines. And this is going to be a show that's not hosted by me, but I'll be supporting that show. and it'll be fun because maybe I'll make a guest appearance and whatnot. But more information is going to be provided at Las Vegas, because here's part 2. Oh, it's a double whammy. We're going to do a live Don't Talk If You Don't Know at Las Vegas. We have set up with Riots. It'll be me, Bryce, as well as who is hosting the EMEA show is going to be happening live at Las Vegas at the Vegas Open, and it'll be the way we open up the entire weekend. So before the very first game of TFT is played, you'll be seeing Don't Talk If You Don't Know happening leading in to the weekend of the event. So that is the double announcements. I said there's only one, but there's actually 2. That'd be really cool. And the Cass, I hope you feel free to stop by. We're going to do like a bunch of guests. It'll be like a 2-hour pre-show leading up into the event. Wasian, Toronto, if are you guys going to Atlanta actually? I didn't ask.
I'll be there.
I'll be there. And
I'm not going, unfortunately.
I speculate that Wasian might be there.
I'm not going, unfortunately.
No, Wasian, you're not going to be there.
We'll see.
That's so sad. Okay, well, Wasian's not going to be there, but anybody here on this podcast, as well as if you're a player, a special player or streamer, feel free to stop by. Welcome back from everyone from the ad break. If you just missed it, we announced Don't Talk If You Don't Know is coming to EMEA in winter 2024. It's a new show. And the second part of this is that we're going to announce who is hosting that show when we do a live episode of Don't Talk If You Don't Know to preview the Vegas Open this December. So it'll be really fun. I've never done a live produced episode of this show, so hopefully it doesn't blow up in my face. Okay, so that's it. So thanks for watching this episode. Set 9 is done, and we'll see you guys in set 10. If you missed any part of this episode, check out our content at youtube.com/@DTIYDK, or follow all of our content for Twitter at twitter.com/DTIYDK show. For Frodan, Casanova, Wasianiverson, and Torontotokyo, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time for more TFT action.